What's going on YouTube? This is Rybo at the Bench, and today I have kind of an unexpected head-to-head video. This is not one that I really planned to do, but I got a comment from somebody on one of my videos asking if I would do a head-to-head of the Dragonfly 2 against the FRN Chaparral. These are two very different knives. They are similar in some ways. They are, I think, fairly close in size. The Dragonfly is obviously a lot smaller, but they're fairly small knives, fairly lightweight knives. However, the price varies quite a bit here. So you're looking at around $60 depending on what configuration you get, and then about 90, a little bit under 90, between maybe 85 and 90 bucks. So $25, $30 price swings. It's really getting out of kind of my comfort level when it comes to head-to-heads, just because you would expect that for $25, $30 more in this knife, you're going to get something that's a lot better than you get here. However, thought I'll give it a shot and kind of see what happens. So there you go, full disclaimer there. Let me do the kind of baseline measurements. So let's do some weight. First of all, for the Dragonfly 2, 1.2 ounces, although you'll notice there's no pocket clip on this. As I've said many times before, I don't use a pocket clip on the Dragonfly. So 1.2 ounces, maybe 1.3, 1.4 with a pocket clip. The Chaparral, 1.9, so you're looking at less than an ounce difference between these two. Fairly close in size. Let's do some quick size measurements. Sharpened blade length is probably the biggest difference between these two knives. On the Dragonfly, 1.85, and on the Chaparral, 2.34. So you do get quite a bit more blade on the Chaparral. Let's see, let's close these up and look at kind of size in the pocket. So closed, you have 3.35 inches on the Dragonfly and 3.65. Not as much of a difference there as you may kind of first guess. And then the width, 1.38 inches and 1.33 inches. Thickness is roughly the same, 0.31. I think this might be a hair thicker. Yeah, 0.33. So Chaparral's actually a bit thinner. But like I said, I mean, this is a little bit bigger knife, just a tad bit heavier, and has a bigger blade. So there we go. Overview real quick, because I almost forgot to do this. Here are the categories: pocket, clip, scales, overall size, that's height, weight, width, how does it carry, yada yada. Ergonomics, action, detent, the blade, steel, lock system, and the intangibles, which is just kind of overall, which knife am I reaching for. So number one, pocket clip. All right, so both of these come with a wire clip standard. I've said before in my review of the Dragonfly, I don't love the pocket clip on here. So I'm gonna give the advantage to the Chaparral, and really that's for a couple reasons. Number one, in terms of like clip to blade, clip to knife ratio, I don't really understand the Dragonfly all that much. I don't have it with me, but you can kind of see where the clip comes up and it comes down still on this point right here. So you can see it's a fairly small clip. I don't really understand it on this knife because it's such a small knife. I think the clip is a little bit hard to work. I think it's a little bit tight because it is so small. Whereas on the Chaparral here, this is a good size clip. I mean, it's a little bit over half the size of the knife. It's got a nice ramp here. I mean, it's the standard wire clip, but it's not like a micro version of that wire clip, which is kind of what's on the Dragonfly here. The other reason that I like the clip on here, and really it's not the clip itself, but it's kind of the whole housing for the clip. You can see here that you have a recessed screw head over here, and you have one, and you can see the quality control on my clip isn't all that great here. But you can see that the screw over here does protrude a little bit from the knife. However, if you compare that to the Dragonfly, you can see that you have that on both sides, and it's probably the most, I don't know, it comes out the most of any Spyderco knife that I have. I don't know if I can get a side-by-side there. But you can see, I don't know if it's just more noticeable on the smaller Dragonfly, but excuse me, it just tends to stick out a little bit more, and I notice it a little bit more than other knives. So overall, I think the clip on the Chaparral works better for the knife. Scales. So this is interesting. You have FRN on both of these. You have this bi-directional texturing, classic spider web type look here. on the Dragonfly, and then you have the honeycomb pattern on the Chaparral. This is really hard for me to judge because visually I think I like the honeycomb better. Practically speaking, the honeycomb is much more aggressive, I think, just in all directions. And so on a lightweight, small, thin knife like this, it is fairly aggressive, and I definitely feel that, and I don't have any issues with losing my grip. So my gut says at first, to go with the honeycomb on the Chaparral. However, like I've said before, the bidirectional texturing is nothing super flashy at this point. I don't even think it looks that great. It's just kind of weird to me. However, it's very functional. It works very, very well, and I think the reason that this edges out the Chaparral to me is the nice contouring here that you have on the handle. For such a small knife, that right there, that transition from this grippy texture here into the kind of middle part of that handle is very, very nice. And especially on a knife where you're kind of wrapping your fingers all around the knife, that is very noticeable. And so that is very, very comfortable there. The bidirectional texturing here is just very practical in the sense that you're pushing up against it this way, or when you pull out of the pocket, you're pulling up against it. It's very well thought through. And so while I like the look of this, I think that I'll give the advantage to the Dragonfly on scales. Overall size. All right, so bigger knife, smaller knife, both of these are incredibly efficient. I think in both cases, you're getting a very nice blade to handle ratio. You're getting a very serviceable blade for both of these. I actually just, before I walked out to the workshop to film this, finished a cutting task with this. It did just great. So both of these are totally fine. However, I will say overall size is a Chaparral win for the reason of efficiency. Spyderco Dragonfly is absolutely an efficient knife. It's a big package in like a small body. I don't know if that's an appropriate or even correct thing to say. But anyway, you get a nice grip. You get nice all around ergonomics. Everything is there. However, it has the same issue that the Delica has and some of the other knives, whereas it's just not the most efficient knife, even for something this small. You can see the blade still leaves a decent bit of the handle here, and on the back you've still got a decent bit of handle material right there. You can see you're not really housing a ton of that blade within the handle. And on the Chaparral, you have just all around a more efficient knife. So you've got right up to the tip, there's the housing, and then over here, that's the pivot right there. And you're just not really wasting a ton of space. So pretty much everything is being used here. I think it's housing a little bit more of the blade than the Dragonfly, or maybe that's just a visual kind of trick. But I do think that this is the more efficient knife when it comes to space, and you're really not giving up any ergonomics. It would be one thing if I said, yeah, you have all this extra space, but it gives you these great ergonomics. That is true, but you have the same great ergonomics on this knife, so no net benefit there. All right, so overall size goes to the Chaparral. Ergonomics. This one's an interesting one too. So both of these knives, I think, because of that finger choil, are very ergonomic knives. Both of them, just you grab the knife very naturally, kind of falls into the hand. For my hands, I think I like both of them a lot. I think for my hands, it's going to be the Chaparral. The Dragonfly is great. I like it a lot. However, the thumb ramp here is fairly steep, and I often find myself more on this top edge than I am actually on the ramp here, just naturally where my hands fall. And that can be a little bit uncomfortable right there. Right there, I can kind of, I don't know if you can see that kind of biting into my thumb a little bit. Overall, the Dragonfly in my hands, and I do have a little bit larger hands, they seem a little bit, it seems a little bit cramped. Still comfortable, but the Chaparral just feels a little bit more natural. I will say that the Chaparral feels a lot thinner, and that's not super comfortable to me, but it's very grippy. A little bit of a hot spot on the pocket clip, but overall, I'll say Chaparral ergonomics probably win out. Action detent, not even going to rank these. I've said before, this is a little bit stiff. I think it's loosened up a little bit. It's very smooth, even if it's never a knife you're going to be able to really flick out. It's very smooth. The Dragonfly is also very smooth. It's it's a back lock, just like the Chaparral. It is very smooth, but I wouldn't say you would ever be able to flick this out either. And so I think these are pretty comparable. Blade. Okay, so this one's interesting as well. So you have two very classic Spyderco looking blades in front of you. Both of these kind of this leaf style blade, full flat grind, no issues, just really great blades overall. You have pretty much the same geometry there, a little bit different. And so for a few reasons, I'm going to give the advantage to the Dragonfly. And really, it's not any practical reason. I think this is probably the slicier knife. Maybe. I mean, both of these are fairly slicey. It's probably slicier just because it's a little bit bigger and longer and, thicker and whatnot. But I do like this blade a little bit more. And a lot of it has to do with that nice swedge right there. That is just very, very nice. It's probably all aesthetics. It does feel like it makes the blade a little bit sleeker, a little bit, I don't know. It's nicer to look at if nothing else. The Chaparral overall, this is a utilitarian blade. This is just a very kind of pragmatic tool. There's nothing special about that blade, no real contouring, or the edges came fairly sharp. And totally fine. It works no problem at all. But there's something about that swedge that just kind of takes some of the visual weight off of the blade, makes it look a little bit sleeker, and I just like that a little bit better. So advantage to the Dragonfly. All right, steel, this is easy. So CTS XHP, which is fantastic steel. It's performed very well versus VG10, which I don't really have a ton of issues with. A lot of people don't like Spyderco's VG10. I do have to sharpen it quite a bit, but usually it's just a little bit on the strop or, a very hard stone in it, and it's just fine. But there we go. Lock system, same deal here. Back locks on both of these. I'm not even going to try to pick one. If I had to, I'd probably pick the Dragonfly just because it is a little bit easier to disengage the lock bar, just because you have this little cutout here, a little bit thicker material. However, you could also say that while it's a little bit more difficult to disengage the lock bar, just a little bit, you also have a stronger back lock here because you have, presumably stronger because you have more metal in this whole construction here as opposed to just FRN. So I think those are pretty trivial, so I'm not even going to rank those. So there we go. We have one more category, and that's intangibles. 4-2, Chaparral wins. No surprise there. It's the more expensive knife. I would kind of expect it to. It's also the newer knife, newer technology, innovations, that kind of thing. But if I had to pick an intangibles category, probably go with the Chaparral. I love the Dragonfly, but I have to think very specifically to go get the Dragonfly out. Just because it is a backup knife, and typically I'm carrying the Rody as a backup knife or kind of a in the pocket carry. The Dragonfly is fantastic, but deep down in the pocket, it's a little bit too wide for me in terms of what else I carry in my pocket. I love the knife. I do carry it quite often, but I have to explicitly think I would like to carry the Dragonfly today. Whereas the Chaparral is in regular rotation as an EDC knife, and so I grab this fairly often. It's very lightweight. The wire clip works very, very well. It disappears in the pocket, very, very strong, very smooth action there. It pretty much can accomplish anything that I practically need to do. And so it's in my pocket almost as much as the Para 3 Lightweight. These are kind of tied at the moment. Para 3 Lightweight has been winning recently, but yeah, they're about tied. So overall, I'd pick the Chaparral. No surprise here. Both are great knives, but one's $30 more and a lot newer. So there you go. Don't know if this helped at all, but there you go. Thanks.